welcome to the show. I am that Chris Gore, and you're listening to PodCRASH. And this is a very special episode of PodCRASH. And this is probably more different than any episode that you've heard previously, because we're talking politics. I don't want to be... when I started the show, I didn't want to be limited by subject matter. I didn't want the show to all be about movies. I didn't want it to all necessarily be about music or TV or pop culture or comedy or whatever. I really wanted to talk about a variety of topics, and nothing gets me more angry than watching the news and watching our government at work, or more accurately, not at work, and just being stuck in this not doing anything zone that we've seen Congress in for so long. So I'm not going to sit here and rant at you in a political sense and espousing any specific views. I will say this, while I do tend to lean more liberal, I have voted for both Republicans and Democrats. But there's no party for me, when you're fiscally conservative and socially liberal, which is how so many people describe themselves these days. Mm-hmm. But there's just no party for that type of person. I'm sitting here with my producer, Sean Merrick.
Yo. And
you look very serious today.
Well, I mean, it's just the issues with politics and everything. I mean, I have my opinions, and you have yours, and it's really, the country, the state that it's in, it's just frustrating, and I share your frustration.
It's frustrating because I kind of feel like, wow, we are kind of seeing the decline of the United States, the greed that is in Washington D.C. and whatnot. And just because we're talking politics on the show today doesn't mean that there won't be some laughs. I can't have a completely serious conversation. And what's shocking to me is how much and now we're entering into an election year, how much of the real news I get from shows like The Daily Show and Stephen Colbert. I'm not sure if you're a frequent watcher of those shows, but on Comedy Central, those shows I almost prefer to get my news from them, because I think, okay, here's the news cycle. It's starting in the morning, and there's some story about Mitt Romney or whatnot, or something Obama did. But I know that the funnier version of that story, and the story that actually will be more factually accurate, is on a comedy show. No. And I'm also the kind of person that I don't think I've voted in every single presidential election since I could vote. I remember going in. I registered to vote, and also I registered for the draft. You're forced to fill out that form.
It's like the service.
Once you turn, when you're 18. And I remember being so excited I could vote in a presidential election. I have not missed one, and I have not missed a debate. I love to watch the debates. It's like, for me, it's like a great sporting event. So I will be watching all of the debates, and it infuriates me watching a presidential debate and you hear either softball questions, no follow-up. It's actually kind of annoying that our comedians are actually the best reporters when it comes to the arena of politics.
That reminds me of that movie Man of the Year. Remember that, when Robin Williams played... He played like a Jon Stewart type of guy, and then he ran for president and won.
No, I never saw Man of the Year, but only because Robin Williams was in it. That's why I avoided it. But I really jumped at the opportunity to be on Social Blend because I like to talk to people who disagree with me. I like to hear different points of view. And then it's like, okay, at the end of the day, we should kind of build something. We should come up with an infrastructure that we're not putting fossil fuel into vehicles that pollute our environment. Let's come up with some other solution. And I'd heard once that if we put 50 square miles of solar panels in the desert somewhere in the United States, it would power the entire grid of the U.S. Look, there could be a lot of debate about that. I think solar power, if you know anything about, if you've done as much research as I have about solar power, I once tried to fit my house with solar panels. It's expensive, even when you get like a tax break from the government. But I think the reason solar power is suspicious to me is because of Ultraman. I used to watch Ultraman as a kid, and I'm thinking, here's this superhero, and he is basically a time limit because, well, the sun's out. I guess he can defeat the monster. Oops, it's a cloudy day. Ultraman is going to collapse. So I think Ultraman was the worst representative of solar power that you possibly could. It made no sense to me. Anyways, you know what does make sense to me? Stitcher. That's right. You can listen to PodCRASH with me, that Chris Gore. It's on Stitcher. Listen on your iPhone, your Android phone, your BlackBerry. Stitcher is smart radio for your phone. Find it in your app store or at Stitcher.com. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to radio. And you know what? Who knows? It's probably solar powered. The other thing is, Sean, and I meant to tell you this, we really appreciate the support we've gotten for this show. The reviews on iTunes are so amazing. I read every single one. Please go to iTunes, rate us 5 stars only if you think we deserve it, and drop a comment there. And I also think, if you really want to support the show, I mentioned that I found a box of DVDs of a short film I made years ago called Red, and there are still copies available. If you go to Etsy.com, that's etsy.com/shop/Chris Gore's Love Spray. It's easy. Etsy.com/shop/Chris Gore's Love Spray. Or you can just look on Etsy, search Red DVD, Etsy.com. I'll sell you a copy of my DVD. This is the last box of DVDs I have of Red. And if you put in the offer code PodCRASH, I'll give you 50% off and a mystery-free gift. Mm-hmm. That's right, a free gift. Sean, I'll give you a free gift. I'll give you a free gift just for coming here today to record this with me.
Thanks.
All right, so let's get to this week's Crash. I was on a show called Social Blend with Greg Davies and Tom Cheradar. His name looks like cheddar. It really makes me hungry for cheese. Yeah. Greg Davies and Tom Cheradar do a show called Social Blend, and the discussion ranges from politics to pop culture, and I was super excited to do this show. You can find it at social-blend.com. That's social.blend.com, and you can find the show on Twitter at CGT2099 and follow Tom at TCHED. That's TCHED on the Twitter. I really enjoyed being a part of this show. It was a lot of fun just because it was a way for me to step out of talking about the usual things I talk about, which is things that are nerdy or things that involve nudity. Those are still favorite things of mine. Don't get me wrong. But this show, we're talking politics. I hope you will enjoy this divert from the usual conversation, but that's what PodCRASH is supposed to be about. Yep. It's about discovering new podcasts, and it's about a range of topics. This week, it's politics, and I think I'd probably make a boob joke here or there.
There's a few.
All right, let's get to Social Blend. Here we are.
Everyone, this is Social Blend. My name is Greg Davies, also known as CGT2099.
I'm Tom Cheradar.
Yes, my co-host from the TARDIS Blend. How you doing, my fellow Time Lord?
I'm doing pretty good.
Excellent, mate. Well, we've got a very special episode for you people out there this week. We are looking back at the year that was 2011. Yes, that's right. It's our year-end review, and we're joined by a very special guest for this particular episode, all the way from Attack of the Show and his new podcast, PodCRASH. It's that Chris Gore. How you doing, Chris?
Thanks for having me, Greg, Tom. I'm really looking forward to this. Year roundup. Let's do it.
Well, let's look at what the year was like for 2011. Well, we've had a whole bunch of stuff going on this year, most notably, and we might as well segue into Killer Occupy Wall Street. You know, that's obviously been a huge issue for the year, and we've had a lot of coverage of it here on Social Blend as well. Occupy Wall Street, without really diving too far into the philosophy of it just yet, had some memorable moments this year. And, of course, I think the most memorable moment, which eventually devolved into one of the most popular memes on the web, was that incident at UC Davis where the lieutenant pepper sprayed the peaceful protesters there.
Which, yeah, I mean, that footage was just shocking. But it also resulted in perhaps one of the best ugly holiday sweaters ever, which also hit the internet on Reddit. It was worn by a coworker of mine, Abby Hepp, who created this holiday sweater based on that. I mean, you saw so many weird memes, and then she had a Christmas sweater with the baby Jesus being pepper sprayed.
That is wicked. I love it.
Go ahead and Google it. You'll find it. But yeah, no, I was at the party with her. I've got pictures of myself posing. My ugly holiday shirt was not so great this year, but hers was amazing. And I like the fact that first of all, the Occupy Wall Street stuff is incredible. I mean, it's incredible to see social change. I think that it's almost as if the generation from the 60s, we did all that change back then, and free love, and we had all the revolutionary music, and we changed things. We've heard so much of that from the previous generation, and hey, you guys are lazy. You don't protest anything. You just accept it all. And it's great to finally see mostly through Twitter and social media and the readily available and affordable technology, people being able to actually organize and protest. Now, if they can decide exactly what they're protesting about in terms of a focus, actually create some specific change. Although I there's identify with the anger on Occupy Wall Street. I mean, we've certainly in the United States done a terrible job at educating our population for them to be able to have productive jobs that in which they can actually have a decent living and be able to afford a home. I'm really excited about the whole Occupy movement. It's something like, first of all, I would never actually go in one of those tents. But I love watching any news reports because it's the kind of protest movement that I find, even though, yes, you can criticize them for not having it together in terms of a message, but I totally identify with people being angry. What is upsetting to me is so little coverage of it in the mainstream media. I'd love to see. I mean, obviously Twitter and whatnot has kind of taken that over, but I love the fact that with cell phones and whatnot and camera phones, we're just able to capture all of this, and nothing can be done without the public watching. I mean, really, it is the power of little brother as opposed to big brother is amazing. What do you think about that, Sean?
I think it's just great that people are pissed off and they're letting everybody know. And it's a hard pill to swallow, especially when you are a part of that 1% or 99%.
Yeah, and I don't think either of us is part of the 1%.
But I think it's just people need to keep it up, and I think it needs to get bigger.
I know that there's some Occupy documentaries, Occupy Wall Street documentaries that are in the midst of being made and whatnot. And there are several.
Yeah. I just hope it's not a footnote.
Yeah, I really hope that it leads to something, but something better than a party. I think the teabaggers, because sometimes their language just upsets me. Plus the fact that they've taken the term teabag. I mean, teabag used to mean, let's face it, it used to mean teabagging was when you put your balls on someone's face, and now that term has been ruined. Let's get back to the podcast.
You mentioned the anger that's in Occupy Wall Street, and to be perfectly honest with you, I'm only now just seeing that starting to bubble up. Like when the protest started, it was civil disobedience and peaceful protesting. But it was almost like a reversed version of that. Like the cops were like, no, you can't protest here. You need to go down the street there. Oh, okay. No, you can't use loudspeakers or megaphones or anything like that. Oh, okay. We'll just do the mic check thing. And it was like kowtowing to the authorities, which, like, I'm sure some of the 60s marching guys would have been a bit, offended about because, they knew civil disobedience back then. But now you're seeing a lot more of that anger bubble up to the top.
Well, it's about time. I'm really glad. I hate to say, I think that something is going to happen that is, I think, going to open people's eyes, and it's going to involve violence because that's what tends to get attention. Although I saw the best Occupy Wall Street sign. I actually did for Halloween. I did the Occupumpkin Wall Street, where I did a bunch of Halloween pumpkins that said shit is fucked up and bullshit. But the best sign that I saw for Occupy Wall Street was a person holding a sign that said, they were getting kicked out of the park where they were occupying. I forget which city this was in, but they said, look, the sign said, if they enforced the rules on the bankers like they're enforcing the rules at the park, we wouldn't be doing this. I thought that was very interesting. It's so ridiculous because I love to just watch the workings of Congress as comedy. It's become utterly ridiculous. We vote these people in and give them money to run their campaigns so they can go and make and vote on things that are utterly, completely worthless and not actually do their job. And it's unbelievable to me that how they can be so incompetent. And some of these guys, especially when you see these sort of these interviews with a lot of congressional members that are where you realize they're just regular dudes. They're just regular folks. We're not talking about, a brain trust here. We're talking like a random sampling of average. And I feel, it's either a good thing or a bad thing that they're incapable. It's kind of like I've had bosses before that were like micromanaging and slave drivers, and that was fine. But then they're the ones that look the other way and don't really do much of anything. And sometimes that can be a good thing. So I don't know. Maybe Congress being filled with incompetent boobs serves us in the long run because they can't actually do any damage.
There was a great headline that I read the other day, and I wish I had the link in front of me, but I don't, unfortunately. But the approval rating for Congress is now at 9%, and the headline read, Congress is now less popular than herpes.
That's funny.
So there you go. So that's where we're at as far as the politics are concerned. And you know what? That's no surprise, especially in recent in the recent couple of months as well, with the National Defense Authorization Act and the Stop Online Piracy Act running around the place.
Speaking of,
yes, Tom.
SOPA. Chris, I work for VentureBeat, which is a tech blog. It's in San Francisco. I'm working on a story. We got a huge list of companies that are supporting SOPA. I'm going down the list, and there's probably like 70 names. And I'm based in Nashville, and I'm realizing at least a third of the list are from Nashville. And more specifically, it's all Bible publishers, country and Christian music publishing and recording labels. And I'm just kind of like, wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
This is what's power, and this one really got me down. Marvel Comics.
Oh no!
It's a funny thing about Marvel Comics supporting the Stop Online Piracy, but I understand it. Like to me, I guess I take a different tack from this because I've had things that I've made creatively stolen. I mean, I'm sure you can BitTorrent. I know you can actually. My movie, my Big Fat Independent Movie, which is a movie that I co-wrote and produced years ago. And so that stuff does bother me. I kind of because I'd like to see the money actually go to artists. So whenever there's, any involving online piracy, I am one of those guys that actually do pay for content unless there's no other way to get it legally. If the movie's not available legally, although like with a film like Battle Royale, that wasn't available legally. It was something that I had to find on a website from England, which is weird. But Marvel doing that. I always side with the artists on that. And what I feel like, in a way, Marvel as a corporation is representing the artists. So let's get back to the podcast. Have you guys seen some of these food documentaries? There's Food Inc. and among other.
Yeah. Food Inc. is great.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, in terms of fast food, I mean, I happen to know Morgan Spurlock, which I asked him recently, like, do you ever eat McDonald's? He goes, absolutely not. He goes, I will not eat McDonald's. I will have Cinnabon before I have McDonald's. But I will eat fast food because there are no other choices, especially I do a lot of traveling. And if I'm on a layover and I'm somewhere in Dallas and there's only a McDonald's, that's my choice. So I know that the guy who created Vitamin Water is trying to start a healthy fast food, meaning it would be a fast food restaurant, the same concept, drive-through window, quick, affordable meals, but all of it with healthy food. I hope that happens. I hope that catches on.
I do too. I agree. Yeah, mate.
We should have him on the show.
Yeah, that would be an interesting discussion.
I would totally get behind that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like, it's the same thing with like, look, we I mean, look, I own a car. I feel guilty that I have a car that burns gasoline. But when I looked at like the cost of a hybrid versus the cost of a gasoline powered vehicle, the hybrid was about $6 or $7 grand more, and I would spend less than that in gasoline. So the difference was, it's like, well, I'm going to go with the cheaper car because that's what I can afford. Unfortunately, it's the one that burns gas and destroys our environment. But this is what I need to survive living in Los Angeles. There's no mass transportation solution. You absolutely have to have a car to get around. It's a horribly designed city. But I feel like consumers choose what is sold to them because that's what's there. And I feel that the people at the top making these decisions, creating these products, they're not thinking in the same way that companies like Google that Google's whole mantra is, their whole thing is just, be good. Isn't it like, well,
yeah.
God, I forgot it now.
Yeah.
Don't be
evil.
Don't be evil. That's it. Yeah. Google's thing is don't be evil. And that's not true. I almost feel like you see these people who run these corporations making these decisions, whether it be the kind of light bulbs we use, although that's Congress just passed a bunch of legislation that has changed all that. But people at the top really should consider how this is going to have environmental impact, social impact, educational. These things should be studied. I mean, who are running these corporations? If they're only concerned with the bottom line in dollars, that's not the most important thing. I mean, where are the ethics?
I mean, even if you look at the TSA, for example, all those X-ray machines that the TSA are buying were headed up and designed, or not designed by, but headed up by a company that is run by one of the guys that used to run the TSA.
Well, it's amazing to me how complacent the American public's become. I mean, after 9/11, I had to go to a film festival in Birmingham, Alabama, which I did attend. It was at the end of the end of September, and I'm taking the trip. I will go. I mean, people were really fearful. I went to this festival, but the one thing that I did not like and did not appreciate was this sort of over-reliance on frisking old ladies and kids, and just like, after a while, come on, folks. I feel like we did this to ourselves.
Do you get searched a lot? Like
the worst thing is I love being searched. I'm like, fine, and not in any sort of perverse sense. I just mean that, like, go ahead, do your worst. I got nothing to hide, and I don't appreciate. I just feel like we've done it to ourselves. I mean, this is how fascism kind of creeps in, is that it just happens slowly in sort of small steps. I don't think just because of the awareness of what and because of the history lessons that came from Nazi Germany, I don't think we're headed that way at all. And the comparisons of Obama to Hitler are ridiculous. But the TSA as an organization is something I have always despised, and I always protest in a polite way. I don't say anything personal, because I feel like the people, they're just doing, and they're made to be automatons. They're made to be basically stupid. They're not allowed to think for themselves.
So do you oppose them as an organization, or just oppose the fact that they have to be so scrutinizing?
All of that. You're gonna think this is weird. Every time I actually go through, there's a machine at LAX that you have to go through when you get on a plane, and it basically gives you a full body X-ray in which they can see everything.
Right. Every
Every time I know that I'm doing that, I have a pair of underwear that says it basically says Fantasticock. This underwear, I got it at Fantastic Fest in Austin, Texas years ago. I bought 2 pairs of this underwear. I still have them. They're kind of tattered. But whenever I go through LAX and I have to go through that machine, the underwear says Fantastic Cock. So I wear the underwear, and it's basically me giving a middle finger or a middle something to the person behind the X-ray machine, because they can basically effectively see me naked, and I'm hoping they can see the outline of that underwear that says Fantasticock. You should all wear interesting fuck you underwear when you have to be X-rayed by the TSA. Back to the podcast, folks.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, while we're on the topic of television, I didn't have anything in the show notes about this, but Tom, you turned me on to Warehouse 13 this year, and that was one of my favorite television shows for the year.
Yeah, I really wanted to hate that show.
Yeah.
Like, I really did, because, it's goofy, siffy show.
Yeah.
And you're not supposed to like their original programming because they canceled, Caprica, and they put their thumb on Battlestar, and you hate them. But honestly, really good show.
It's so much fun though. There's and that's the selling element for me about that show, is that there's so much fun.
I feel like that's the American version of the closest we're going to get to an American Doctor Who.
That's a bold call. I don't know about that. But what other television grabbed your attention this year, guys? I mean, I don't actually own a television. I don't watch TV. I watch television series on Netflix and stuff like that. But what grabbed your attention this year? What do you think were the standout things for 2011?
For me, The Walking Dead. I think just to see that translated faithfully in the best possible way to television. And by faithfully, I mean they actually took advantage of rewriting the comic in a way that made it better. So I think Walking Dead, I think was particularly good. Boardwalk Empire on HBO. Also a big fan of Hung. I think it's a hilarious show. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I just happen to love that. I mean, it just defies sitcom. And The Office, the American version of The Office, is still funny. I like that format. I like the way that comedy is told. It's a realistic approach to comedy, and I prefer that to the let's tell the audience when to laugh. That we're on a stage and people all talk like writers. Like that horrible show Whitney. I just to me that's like the worst of. And the worst part is I record, I DVR The Office, and then when I watch it, I'll generally catch the first 45 seconds of Whitney because they kind of overlap, and I have to grab the remote or stick something in my ears when just the sound of that type of cliche sitcom reminds me of how because TV when I grew up was horrible. I mean, we're talking about like 3 channels, growing up with 3 channels, reruns on UHF. There was no cable, and having to grow up with this crap. And there really was nothing on TV. If someone says there's nothing on TV, it's like, look, there's plenty for you to catch up on. But that really sitcom should die. That type of comedy should die, and it really should be shows like Community and The Office. I think that's the future of comedy. I guess maybe there's a certain percentage of the public that really responds to things like 2.5 Men, but I think the only time I've ever seen 2.5 Men was I was on a plane and I tried to watch it for a few minutes because of all the Charlie Sheen, hullabaloo.
Winning.
And yeah, exactly. Oh God. What's funny about that is how quickly pop culture, how we consume pop culture so quickly now, where something is, oh my gosh, this affected us. Next. It's like the end of the Truman Show. The way that the movie ends is people just change the channel and go to the next thing. And that was a really weird ending, where the Truman Show ended, and then just people flipped the channel and it was on to the next thing. That's how we are daily. Mm-hmm. Something horrible happens. It's on the internet. It's consumed. It's tweeted. It's retweeted. It's memed. It's regurgitated. It's defecated out of Kim Jong-il's non-asshole. and then we're on to the next thing. I just wonder how we will evolve as a species if this is how we're processing things that should really affect us.
I want to shift gears real quick, guys, because we're burning through the time real quick, and I want to focus on some of the other entertainment stuff for the year before we close out. Now, the 3 movies that for us on Social Blend that got the most coverage this year, because we're total comic book geeks, were Thor and Captain America and Green Lantern. And Thor and Captain America I was quite impressed with. Green Lantern as a 3D film viewing experience I enjoyed, but as a story I did not too much. What did you guys think of those movies?
I really love Captain America. It really shows that I think another way to tell a story of a superhero is make it a period film. It actually gave the film the ability to be more schmaltzy. I mean, it could actually, be very sentimental, and that's okay because it's the 40s. People were more sentimental back then. But what's really funny is the fact that effectively, Steve Rogers never got to dance with that girl, and wakes up in modern day as effectively the world's oldest living virgin. And
Yes.
it's funny to point that out, but I wonder, is Steve Rogers ever going to get laid? That was my first thought. I'm thinking, he never got to dance. He was kind of timid with the ladies, because what's kind of cool about the character is they really focused on that section of the film where he's this skinny geek, which was so well done with the mix of special effects. I mean, they basically put his face onto this skinnier guy's body. Had to make him even skinnier. But it's amazing how he still had the heart of kind of this geeky, awkward nerd, but he's got these big muscles, but just could not get laid and he's surrounded by dancing girls.
Yeah.
Thor I liked a lot, basically because of Chris Hemsworth. I think he was amazing. I just feel that the sort of weird mix of the Earth, scenes and the scenes on Asgard didn't quite. The Asgard stuff was way better, and I'm just curious to see how he'll fit in. So I like I think they did a great job with the character, not so much with the story, which is, okay, what does he do that's heroic? He's kind of responsible for all the crap that's happening on Earth. He should clean it up. And from the looks of the Avengers, it kind of looks like Thor fucked up Earth again. I have to admit, I'm not a big fan of Thor. I'm not a big fan of Thor. I mean, if you think about it, what good does this guy? I feel like every time he's coming to Earth, he's like a drunk god that destroys your apartment, messes things up, and then kind of kicks out the other people who helped along with him mess up your apartment, and you're supposed to thank him for it. My apartment is still messed up. Yeah. And by apartment, I mean city. So I don't get the appeal of Thor. It's not like he had some origin that said, well, I will be a superhero and save people. He's a vain, selfish prick in a way. Yeah, he's like a blonde Fabio. 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 What am I saying? Fabio. He's a blonde Fabio with a helmet and a hammer, and I kind of feel like what good has Thor ever done?
Honestly, he probably hasn't really done a whole lot. I mean, he's just a guy. He's just a god. He's not like you say. He doesn't. I don't know. It's just the story for the movie. It doesn't really show okay, he's just an arrogant guy that had to learn a lesson. Whereas he didn't really have anything happen to him that created his persona as a hero.
I don't understand what he. I feel like in order to be a hero, this is what's been lost in these superhero movies: is you have to sacrifice something. You have to be willing to give something up. And I feel like Thor didn't give anything up. He didn't say, well, I'll be a hero and a good guy even though I don't have any powers. He just sort of gets his powers back in about 2 days. And yeah, I don't know. I have to say, though, in spite of everything I just said, I still thought the movie was kind of fun. But not so much the scenes on Earth.
It wasn't as good as everybody was saying it was before I saw it, but it was still pretty good.
All right, you know what? That is a good review. Let's go back to the podcast.
And finally, closing out, one of the features, Chris, that we do on the show at the end of every show is we have a look at a What the Fuck story of the week. And so because this is our year-end show, we're going to go with the What the Fuck story of the year. And this was a story we actually followed over a few weeks as details came out. But it's a story about a meteorologist in Arkansas called Brett Cummins. And he was found in a hot tub with a dead, naked man who was wearing a dog collar.
What?
Yes. And one of the articles I'm looking at here from...
sounds like an episode of Breaking Bad.
Yeah, it's an Arkansas weatherman didn't predict he would wake up in a hot tub with a naked dead man, but that's exactly what police say happened. Now authorities are trying to determine what killed Dexter Williams, whose body was found with a dog collar around his neck, according to a police report. And it was an interesting story because, for me, when we brought it up on the show the first time, the names in the story just sounded fake. Guy gets caught in hot tub and his last name is Cummins. and the guy who died is called Dexter. I mean, it just sounds like a movie scene from a weird movie or something like that.
I hear something like that, and I just think to myself, I'm glad it wasn't me.
So yeah, that's what happened, and but the most we got out of the story was that there was drugs involved, and it was an overdose related death. And but the thing is, he had a dog collar around his neck, and I am absolutely dead certain that the guy passed away from autoerotic asphyxiation, because it probably was one of those choker collars. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, I'm not going to say that I'm speaking from experience, but I might be speaking from experience. But I will just say this: it's important that you have a safe word.
Yes. Safe words can be helpful.
Make sure your safe word isn't more.
I saw a funny Velociraptor picture the other day about the Mile High Club, and the question was, if you masturbate while on a plane, is that called a hijack?
That's great.
So there we go. That was our What the Fuck story of the year. And I'm sure we will have many more to come in the year 2012, because we will have a lot of, I think we're going to have some interesting stories from people next year, especially as we get close to the dreaded Mayan date predicting the end of the world. I'm sure we're going to see some Kool-Aid stuff going on then. Speaking of 2012, do you guys have any predictions? What you'd like to see either in, the world of politics, in world news, or movies, music, whatever comes to mind? What are some of the predictions you have for next year?
I think political season is going to be the worst, and Obama will narrowly get reelected, and I think the world will not end, and I think that The Dark Knight Rises will probably be the best film of the year and be nominated for Best Picture. Those are my predictions for 2012.
What movie did you say for the Best Picture nomination?
The Dark Knight Rises.
Really? You think that's going to be get the nomination?
Absolutely. I mean, it happened with Return of the King, with Lord of the Rings, as they'll take a third film, and I mean, and they'll in a series that actually is deserving of recognition, because what I like about the Nolan Batman films is they're a source of commentary for social issues. Mm-hmm. And this one in particular, if you've seen the new trailer for The Dark Knight Rises, available, it's on the internet, it seems as if he'll be addressing some of the Occupy Wall Street issues, the 1% versus the 99%, and Bruce Wayne being among the 1% as a billionaire. So I'm curious to see, because Nolan initially said he wasn't going to do the third Batman film, and then he said he came up with what the theme was, and then he kind of works backwards into a story, knowing what the theme will be. And I think The Dark Knight really surprised a lot of people. It basically showed that a superhero movie, because let's face it, Thor, Captain America, and Green Lantern are for kids. As much as you think, here we are, we're grown men here. We're talking about these kids' movies. Yeah. The Dark Knight, I think, is the first time you really saw a superhero character in a film.
Yeah, I think
it's for adults. That is an adult movie. That movie is for adults. It's not for kids.
Absolutely.
It's not any responsible adult would not take a child to see The Dark Knight. That movie is freaking scary. So I think The Dark Knight Rises is going to take it much further. And I would hope that we could see, although every time I get optimistic and think that the Academy is going to look beyond dramas, because it's pretty much the white people drama movie awards is what it's been for years, mm-hmm. and always things with social issues and movies that end up being, that tug at your heart, but you'd never watch more than once. And genre movies, science fiction, fantasy, horror, superhero genre, which it fits into in that realm, always get overlooked. And I'm hoping that this is the year. I'm hoping Dark Knight Rises gets recognition from the Academy. That's my prediction. I'm sticking to it.
Well, that's a good prediction. Actually, I was going to say, Kevin Smith himself actually did say on I think it was the Always Watching podcast before they became known as the Slash Film Cast. He said on that podcast that The Dark Knight is the godfather of the superhero genre. And it really is when you think about it. It's there's a lot of depth and thought gone into the creation of that universe that Nolan has adapted. And
well, let's hope that the third one is not Godfather 3, because that really sucked.
Oh, I don't know. I'm kind of an old school guy, dude. I'd like The Godfather Part 3. I have a soft spot in my heart for that. You know, Al Pacino delivered some killer lines in that film.
Well, I mean, Pacino's great, but I mean, his daughter is much more, Sofia Coppola, much more talented as a director than an actress. That and when that movie was rushed. It had to meet a Christmas date. Francis Ford Coppola initially asked for 6 months to write the script. He was given 6 weeks. He had the last minute casting change. From Winona Ryder was initially supposed to play Al Pacino's, Michael Corleone's daughter, to Sofia Coppola, and that final, what's supposed to be dramatic dad, as she falls dead on the steps, is kind of ridiculous now in retrospect. It could have been great, but I really feel like we've gotten to a place with Hollywood films as soon as they're announced and the money is put together and everything else, it's a drive towards here's the date the movie's coming out, and it used to be that filmmakers would take months to edit a movie. Now the movie is assembled, by the time they finish shooting. Everything is accelerated in this process because there's so much money at stake, and I'm not sure. I think that it doesn't help the creative process as much unless you're the kind of person who can work within that. And guys like Nolan have figured out how to do it. So his output, he's got a pretty good track record so far. I hope that Dark Knight Rises continues that trend. Well, that's it for this week. I really want to thank Greg Davies and Tom Sheridar of Social Blend. You can follow Greg at CGT2099, and you can follow Tom at TChed. They're both on Twitter. That's at TChed, C-H-E-D. And get more episodes of Social Blend at social-blend.com. Those guys were great. It was a great discussion. It was really good to be able to step out of just talking about movies and pop culture and comics. And then you know what happened? We talked about politics, and then we ended up talking about movies and pop culture, and it always ends up that way, doesn't it?
It's always what you like best.
It's always like, Obama's a good president, but what about Thor? Is he stronger than the Hulk? And I'm sure that we'll get that answer when the Avengers comes out in May. I'm really looking forward to that movie. And I'm also looking forward to the presidential election in November and all the presidential debates. The presidential debates, it's like watching a superhero comic. Where they verse each other. Mm-hmm. Anything with I love anything with verses in the title. Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. Batman versus Superman.
Romney versus Santorum.
Yes, Dracula versus Frankenstein. It's Frankenstein's monster, folks. So that's it. Thank you to the guys at Social Blend. Love them. I would love to be back. You can follow me at that Chris Gore. You can also follow the show at PodCRASH Show on Twitter. Angry Hero Sean. That's what he is on Twitter, at Angry Hero Sean. You can talk to Sean Merrick and tell him what you really think. But that's it for this week. And as we're fond of saying at the end of every episode of PodCRASH, let's get out of here!
Gonna need a rain check on that dance.
All right. A week next Saturday at the Stork Club.
You got it.
8 o'clock on the dot. Don't you dare be late. Understood?
I still don't know how to dance.
I'll show you how. Just be there.
We'll have the band play something slow. I'd hate to step on your...
Steve? Steve?
If you're still listening to this, you're probably a lot like me. You're the kind of person who stays till the very end of a movie and looks at all the credits, the lights are coming up and you're walking out, you're probably a lot like me. And for that, you shall be rewarded. The first 5 people to @reply to @PodCRASH Show on Twitter and say, let's get out of here, will win a free DVD. Now, it's going to be a DVD of my choice, so it may not be very good, maybe some review copy that's been collecting dust, but I'll send you a DVD. Let's get out of here. That's all you have to say, @PodCRASH Show. First 5 people. And if you send a self-addressed stamped envelope to PodCRASH with that Chris Gore, 5042 Wilshire Boulevard, PMB 1500, Los Angeles, California 90036. Send me a self-addressed stamped envelope. I will send you back a free gift. Something you're really going to enjoy. Trust me. Later.